Kenneth had always believed that his life was meant to be a quiet one, a life of solitude on the edge of a small town where the air was crisp and the nights were his alone. The silence of the dark was a blanket. He wrapped himself in a comfort that never failed him, but that belief shattered the moment the knock came at his door past midnight, when the world should have been asleep, and yet there stood a figure cloaked in shadow and silver light, her hair catching the glow of the porch as if the strands were spun from the very moon, her eyes violet and piercing that seemed to see of his door as if she knew he was there watching. Kenneth should have turned beyond the woodaway. He should have pretended no one was home. But curiosity gripped his heart and held it firm, compelling him to open the door just wide enough to meet the stranger who was anything but ordinary. She stepped inside the threshold without waiting for full permission. Her presence a storm barely, and when she spoke her voice contained. The cloak that covered her form was soaked from the drizzle that had begun to kiss the earth, but underneath, her figure was defined by something elegant, something not of this world. Her face, too symmetrical, too flawless to belong to any human race, was simple, not from here. Kenneth laughed, a shallow, carried a resonance that was soft yet commanding. She told him her name was Carol, and when asked where she came from, her reply and the sincerity in her voice, and though every part of his way, his soul recognized the desperation, the need, that disbelieving sound, but she stood unwavering, her gaze steady as she declared that she was being hunted, and his home was the only shelter she could find in this vast and unfamiliar world. Kenneth felt the weight of her eyes without shame. She had been studying his breathing, unfamiliar with species, did not sleep as humans did. They remained vigilant, ever-rational mind warned him to send her. Crossed galaxies to reach his doorstep, and so he allowed her to stay, though she refused. The spare that she could watch the rise and fall of his chest as if it were a room, insisting that her safety depended on being near him for reasons she could not fully reveal, was a relic of an alien civilization to her. Everything was. That first night was filled with unease and the quiet wariness of strangers forced into proximity. Kenneth awoke to the distinct feeling of being watched, and when he opened his eyes, there she was, Carol, sitting at the edge of his bed, her violet gaze fixed on him, unblinking. He demanded, and humans respected the etiquette explanation, and she offered it, the concept of human sleep, her alert, especially in foreign places where survival demanded constant awareness. Kenneth found it unsettling, yet intriguing, the idea. Subject of scientific inquiry, she moved through his home with the same detached curiosity, toast fruit things, prepared not just for inspecting objects, as though every item strange and new. Yet she absorbed the details, swiftly adapting, mimicking, until the unfamiliar. How to was a shadow that followed her, a secret. She did not share a truth that became slightly more comprehensible. The gravity, the diet, the subtle differences between. He taught her the basics, the importance of privacy, the boundaries of not watching someone slumbering or eating raw food as though it were still part of the wild. Carol listened, storing the information like data in a processor, and slowly began to integrate these human customs, though sometimes with awkwardness, like the time she bit into a raw egg. Unaware that the shell was not meant to be consumed, Kenneth intervened, his exasperation tinged, but with a strange specificity, with humor guiding her gently toward scrambled egg sustenance. But for the shared experience of a meal, she learned how to hold utensils, mimic the motion of eating, though every bite seemed to be a study rather than nourishment. Yet one night she stood by the window, her arms folded tight across her. Even as she adapted there, something growing, a presence, weighed heavily in the quiet moments when she believed he was not watching. It was in the dead of night when Kenneth discovered her standing before the bathroom mirror, her fingers tracing her collarbone as though seeking something beneath. The skin, her expression was distant and troubled when he questioned her. She admitted with a rare breath of vulnerability that her body felt different. She could not explain it, only that change was stirring within her. Kenneth suggested perhaps it was the atmosphere of it all, questioning genetic species, barriers, every rule of worlds, but her eyes remained clouded with doubt. She was adapting, yes, but not entirely by choice. Something within her was shifting beyond her control. and she did not know what it meant. She would not walk this path alone. Refused medical help, dismissing the idea with a firmness that left no room for argument. She would endure. She said she would adapt, but the shadow in her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. As days turned into weeks, Kenneth observed the changes. Carol no longer stood as unwavering as before. She grew tired, resting more often. Her appetite deepened. She craved his food, the things he prepared, as if her body rejected her alien habits and embraced the human way. With urgency chest, her silhouette tense and fragile under the pale light. When Kenneth approached, she confessed, her voice trembling, that there was something inside her she could know longer ignore. Kenneth's mind reeled at her confession, disbelief and confusion, battling for dominance, but her eyes told him she was certain of what she felt. She believed herself to be carrying life, his life, their life together, an impossibility that defied biology, defied logic, yet stood undeniable between them. Kenneth grappled with the absurdity. Science that screamed this could not be, and yet Carol's body told a different story. Her awareness of the life inside her grew sharper, more intimate, her energy being redirected to nourish what grew within her. She had never known another's touch. She told him never had her body been connected to another in this way. He was the first, the only. And that truth settled between them, heavy and unyielding. She admitted fear, a concept foreign to her kind. Warriors, explorers, conditioned to stand against the unknown. But this was a frontier she did not understand, and in her vulnerability Kenneth found his resolve. He promised. Carol warned that should humans learn of her condition, they would not allow her freedom. She would become an object of study, dissected for understanding her child, a specimen to be owned. Kenneth felt the weight of that reality, the cold curiosity of science, the greed of governments that would seek to control what they could not create. He swore no one would touch her, no one would harm their child. She looked at him with softened eyes, her walls beginning to crumble, and she allowed his hand to rest on hers. A fragile connection in the midst of a storm. They first time stood together, not knowing what lay ahead, but knowing they would face it as one. Time continued its relentless march, and with it Carol's body transformed faster than any human. Pregnancy, her posture changed subtly, her gaze often distant, as if listening to whispers only she could hear at night. She sat beneath the stars, her violet eyes reflecting the cosmos. Kenneth joined her, asking of her thoughts, of her fears, and she confessed that her kind did not conceive so easily, that reproduction was rare and controlled, engineered even for a purpose. Yet here she was, carrying life from a union that should not have been possible, and yet was her body defied her. Kenneth, when he placed his hand on her stomach, he felt knowledge rewriting her understanding of self and species. She told him then of the presence she felt within, not just growth, but awareness. The child was conscious, awake, knowing her knowing. It too, not a heartbeat, not a kick, but a pulse, a sensation of being recognized, of being seen. Carol admitted that she could hear its thoughts, not in words, but in emotions, echoes of understanding that passed between them. Kenneth was both awed and terrified, for what kind of being was this, born of two worlds, and yet belonging to neither? Warrior spirit. Kenneth stood by her. They understood now that this child would not be confined by the limitations of human or alien to the life they had created together. It would be something new, something unprecedented. Carol feared not for herself, but for the child, for Kenneth, for the world that was unprepared for such a being. Her body continued to adapt, embracing the rapid changes with the resilience of her unwavering. His fear tempered by his commitment to her, set into motion by forces neither of them could command, and yet they walked it. Shared moments of peace, moments of laughter that felt rare and precious in the shadow of the unknown. The nights brought new sensations, the child's awareness reaching further, its presence pressing against Kenneth's thoughts like a whisper in a dream. He felt it not as speech, but as understanding, a connection forming that transcended language. Carol confirmed that they had no control, that this was a path from him. Her laughter soft, her gaze no longer of something profound between them. They were no longer strangers or together forging a bond that deepened with every shared glance, every silent acknowledgement. Kenneth cherished these moments, knowing that Carol gave birth to a child, that they were part of something far greater than themselves. They built routines, cooking together, sharing quiet evenings under the moonlight, where words became unnecessary. Carol no longer stood apart. Cold but warmed by the proximity of trust, they knew their lives had irrevocably changed. Carol whispered that were the foundation accidental partners. They were companions in a journey of creation, a journey that defied reason. Their child cooed softly, as if defined, not by fear, but by hope, by love, and by the limitless possibilities of, but embraced the very essence of connection. Then came the day when the stirrings beneath Carol's skin became undeniable. The child moved not just within her body, but within their shared awareness. Months had passed in a blur of change and growth, and then one morning, bathed in the golden light of dawn, neither human nor alien, but a perfect synthesis of both, with violet eyes that glowed gently and warmth that echoed Kenneth's presence. The child looked at them not with the blindness of a newborn, but with recognition, as if it had been watching from the very beginning. Kenneth held Carol close, his arm around her shoulders. Their child nestled safely between them, and in that sacred moment, this child would change everything, and Kenneth, with a quiet smile, promised that they would guide that change together, ensuring it would be for the better, understanding the gravity of its existence. And together they embraced the beginning of a new chapter, a journey. What it meant to be more than human, more than alien, but something entirely new.